Hi, Melyssa. It's so good to have you on the show.
Hi, Karolina. I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be so fun.
Well, I have been watching you from afar a long time, and I just got the honor of working with you this year in your mastermind. But for anyone in the audience who hasn't heard of you or doesn't know about you, can you share a little bit about what you do online?
Yeah, so I have a company that helps entrepreneurs to basically use their business as a portal for their own inner growth, and then using that inner growth as the catalyst that propels their business forward. So I find that a lot of business owners will prioritize the business growth and the revenue and the tactics and the audience and followers and things like that without actually seeing if they have any blocks internally that are preventing them from getting to that next level. And so if we can get rid of those blocks and heal them from the inside out, then I feel like you can have better results in every area of your life. So I do that through the mastermind program that you are a part of, my podcast, online programs, things like that.
I love how you share that. This isn't per se a podcast on business, right? It's about really becoming true to yourself and removing the things that don't serve you anymore. So we talk a lot about our relationships with alcohol here. But I love this lens of instead of talking about the business tactics, about how you have been able to use inner growth to propel not only your own personal growth, right, but how you've then created a massive success in that in the world. So can you take me back many years ago? Where did you get started? How did this become a reality for you?
So I kind of random started my business when I was a teacher in Japan. So I went to Japan after college because I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I just knew that I wanted to get out of the bubble that I had been living in Southern California at the time. And so I picked a destination that seemed really far away and that had a culture that I was pretty unfamiliar with. So moved to Japan, lived there for about 2.5 years. And towards the end of living there, I was really feeling like I was lacking the sense of community and creativity, both in the work that I was doing as a teacher there and also in my life and community that I had in Japan. And so I thought, I'll start something online. And I just started a little blog, and it was kind of back when blogging was more of a thing. And I was writing about my experiences and eventually saw people who were selling graphic design services online. Had no idea that that was even a thing, that you could have an online business or blog and make money. But I started offering graphic design services because I had always had a passion in it, and eventually was making some decent money, like a couple $1,000s a month, enough to live off of. Decided to quit my job as a teacher, move back to California, and focused on that graphic design business for a couple of years. And eventually it turned into this 6-figure company. And I was blogging all about what I was doing to grow that business. And as somebody who's a teacher at heart, I found way more passion in teaching people about what I was doing to grow this business than I did actually running that business itself. And so I closed that side of things down and eventually just started creating courses and programs on business tactics and how to grow your online business and get email subscribers and grow your revenue and things like that. And that was really fun for a period of time too, because I was flexing that teaching muscle, and it was going really well. It was going really well. And I think because it was going so well, I kept myself in this loop of doing it for longer than I was passionate about it. And so eventually I long story short, went through this period of burnout, which I see burnout now as just continuing to walk down a path that's not yours rather than simply being exhausted or tired. And I really reached that point of knowing that this wasn't my path anymore. So I pivoted into combining the business strategy, but also with what I do now, which I described earlier, of helping people with the inner healing and inner growth and accessing their truth more. And I find, when you combine those things, then anything's possible. And like you were saying too, you help people with, shifting their relationship with alcohol. I think there's always something in our lives where we get to use it as this portal, this gateway to our own healing, our own expansion. For me, it's business. For you, it's helping people with their relationship with alcohol, but it could be anything, right? Anything in our lives that we are dedicated to in some way and that we want to shift and use that as a way to get to know ourselves better.
Yeah, that's such a powerful, powerful statement, and in a way, you had a very, I think, unexpected trajectory from like what the normal is. Like you're in your late 20s or so, right? And you have this massively successful company kind of on your hands. And then yet you know, there's just a lot of hustle going along with it, like you said, and just like a lot of, you know, success. But with that, like you said, probably strains and stress and all of that, how that comes with it. And so like, what did, you know, like we often, like you said, making kind of parallels between the two, we sometimes chase these things that don't serve us because we want to feel a certain way. We want to be appreciated or valued or accepted or feel like we belong in certain situations, you know, especially social drinking and stuff like that. And how did that kind of equate for you with success? Like, how was success kind of a way that you tried to prove yourself as worthy, I guess?
Yeah. And I love that you said you had a lot of success in your business in your late 20s. And as you were saying that, I was thinking like, oh, so interesting, this concept of success and the way that we think about it and define it as a society. Because yeah, on the outside, I had a lot of success. I had, you know, my business had grown into this multi-million-dollar thing, and there were a lot of people in my community. And so it looked really successful. And I think I almost tricked myself into feeling like it is really successful, even though my relationships were suffering because I was always working. I wasn't prioritizing the things that I loved in my life, like hobbies and rituals and things like that. I wasn't prioritizing my self-care, my inner healing. Like on the inside, it didn't feel very successful, even though it looked like it did on the outside. And so I think it's so important to shift our concept of success to whatever feels true for us. Like I know some people, success for them is living in Costa Rica off the land and growing their own vegetables, not needing a lot of money or fame or, you know, society's version of success. And that feels delightful to them. And that feels like the juiciest, most fulfilling life they could have. And so I think it's like, if we can shed whatever we think success is, and then just start defining, you know, what does it feel like and literally feel like in your body? And how do you know when you start to feel that way? What are your values? And are you living your values on a daily basis? Because if you're not, then I feel like that's not a very successful life either. And so sometimes having the most successful life is a lot of like letting go of what you think success needs to be and allowing in whatever success for you really is. So that was a lot of my journey too. Like, what do I get to release? How am I showing up in my business that's not creating my authentic version of success? And what do I get to shift so that I can actually lean more into that? And as I've done that, I just feel like my life feels so much more fulfilling and true and honest and joyful, you know, all the things that I want it to feel like.
Yeah, I see that so much. And like, I look up to you a lot because you embody that so much. You know, you're out there having disco parties on the beach and just traveling to Guatemala, just having like this big expansive life, you know, at the same time managing a big, you know, a successful company as you have it with a very soulful purpose, you know. And I'm curious, like, we talk about like what success looks like on the society kind of level, right? And you know, a lot of us have very demanding kind of jobs and careers, and there's a lot of stress involved with that. They could be high paying, you know, very successful careers, and then it's like creates the cycle where we're always needing relief from that. You know what I mean? It's like that's so much of this onness, this productivity, this just like perfectionism, just so much of this being like on and perfect according to someone else's standard. So then we like need to retreat, and we have like just these moments of just numbing ourselves, distracting ourselves, just completely turning so off because of how like burnt out we are. You know what I mean? And it's like you could live in that cycle for the rest of your life if you wanted to, right? And it's like, what was it worth? What was it for? You know, like, was it really for this paycheck or this like status symbol that we all go chasing? How did you learn to redefine like what feels good for you? You know what I mean? How, like, because I think it's as we mature too, we initially carry so many different, you know, ideas and belief systems that aren't our own to carry anymore, you know? So it's a lot of shedding, like you said. But it's also like a lot of, I think, confidence and boldness to even have desires, to even have your own preferences, to even have your own kind of like dreams. So tell me, like, you were super burnt out. What happened next?
Yeah. So my burnout was, it was almost out of necessity that I needed to reevaluate my life, because I had gone to a doctor, was diagnosed with things like adrenal fatigue and thyroid problems, and it had started manifesting physically. So I took personally this 6-month sabbatical where I didn't work and really didn't do a whole lot of anything. I was healing physically, but also healing this very old wound that I had mentally and emotionally, that I always had to overdo it and had to be this like quote high achiever. So that helped. And I know that that's not accessible to everyone, to take 6 months off from life and figure yourself out. So I don't think that that was like the thing that changed everything for me. I think it was really helpful. But I really think that for me, it was prioritizing my own healing. The more that I came in touch with myself and my higher self, even, the more that it was easy and almost effortless to start choosing things that really served me and felt really good. Because then I could become aware of the story when it was happening. I could become aware of like, am I doing this launch? Am I scheduling this project because I genuinely feel lit up by it? Or because it's the way I've always done things? Or because I feel like I need to do it to stay relevant? Or because I dipped below my my like barometer of success in my savings account, and so I feel like I need to suddenly have this big cash injection so that I feel more stable within myself. And I started looking for, where can I create that inside of me, instead of always looking for something in my business or outside of myself to give me that sense of stability and centeredness in who I am. I think a lot of these choices that we make that are self-abandoning, where we'll pick something in our lives that we want to pursue that actually isn't the truth of who we are, comes from this just physical nervous system problem. It's like our nervous system starts acting up and saying that we need to do something to feel better. And if we can actually just find ways to soothe that part of ourselves, then we can start to become aware and make different choices. And that's why I think too that it's so important to know what your values are, know what fulfillment looks like for you, because then you know what you're chasing, you know what you're really desiring to create, versus falling back into the same story and pattern that can be just like this autopilot thing. Like, it's such an autopilot thing for most of us, right? We just do it. And then we get to the thing that we were doing, and we're like, this sucks. Why am I doing this? I feel so miserable and tired, and I feel like I'm further away from how I want to feel. So it's interrupting the autopilot. And I think that just comes from healing self-awareness and soothing the emotional nervous system part of ourselves.
Yeah. I feel like we talk a lot here about this idea of an emotional home, and it's like almost the human condition to want to look outside of us to feel whole, and so we try to fill it with all these, could be like success, right? Could be alcohol, could be anything. Um, and we're always feeling like not enough. And we're subconsciously teaching ourselves, I am not enough because I need to use this crutch to feel better, right? And so this idea of like finding and building your own emotional home, like that's very nurturing and loving, and where you take care of yourself, you mother yourself, I think is really important, because we do have, our nervous system can react, like you say, to just different stimuli in the world. That's normal, but to be able to have the tool set and even the scripts, like you said, like for your inner critic when it comes up, to be able to soothe yourself, I think is so, so huge. Can you share a few examples? You used a really great term about like abandoning yourself, and it could be from the little most minutia things to like big decisions. Can you share a few that like you had stepped into as you were growing yourself and your business that you later then shed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's see. Like, for example, self-abandonment for me could have looked like uh, having a conversation with a team member and them saying something that I felt sort of crossed a boundary for me, or being asked to do something that didn't feel aligned for me. And in the past, maybe just doing it or ignoring the thing in the conversation that I didn't want to say, like not saying the thing that I wanted. And really reclaiming my sense of truth and my sense of self would be creating the boundary or speaking up in the conversation, even if it created some sort of uncomfortability, so that there was truth in the way that we were communicating versus kind of shoving things under the rug. And, that goes for all relationships, not just business ones, obviously, too. But that would be one example of, not abandoning myself. another one that I kind of mentioned earlier that was big for me is I love doing things. I really do. And from a genuine place rather than always from like a needing to prove myself place. I just really like the variety of life. But sometimes that variety of life can add too many things to my plate where I'm not conscious of the overwhelm that I'm creating, right? And so for me, sometimes self-abandonment could look like adding those things to my plate and telling myself it's just because I love doing things, when in reality it was because I had an underlying fear of like, I need to make more money this month, or if I don't launch something soon, people are going to forget about my brand. Like just these fears that can come up that are deep wounds that come from obviously this very old part of myself that wanted to feel loved and accepted and not rejected or forgotten or abandoned, right? By others and by myself. And so the reclaiming myself in that previous abandonment is like, again, having that pause. I think the pause in life is so important. Having the pause to ask myself, am I doing this because I authentically want to, or because I feel like I have to, because I feel like I should? And then actually authentically answering. And so it meant that I did a lot less launches and found other ways to, exercise that creativity in my business. And it's not to say that everybody, I know not everyone listening to this podcast is probably a business owner, but it's not to say that you have to just like stop doing the things you love and slow down your entire life. I still do a lot of things and I enjoy them. It's just, what place of you are those things coming from? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Are you doing them because you genuinely want to, or because you think you have to, or because there's a fear that's driving the ship underneath the surface? And how can you release that? So yeah, that was my big thing in terms of abandoning.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up so much now, like there's this idea of boundaries, right? And I think like we are so scared of putting some up because of our fear of confrontation. And that comes usually from our childhood of having, well, like that's something that we wanted to be, the peaceful child, the one that didn't cause problems, so many things there, and internal wounds, like you said, of where our motivation lies. Is it really because we want to do the thing, or is it because we're trying to prove something or feel worthy or be appreciated or applauded or whatever? So I'm curious, how is like working through all of this? It's very deep, it's very personal, it stretches our, back to our childhoods. How has working with like coaches and spiritual teachers really helped you in this healing journey?
Oh gosh, it's been everything. And, going back to my love of variety, I've worked with a lot of different coaches and I found that to be really helpful. And maybe it's not for everyone. I know some people love to hone in on one person for like years as their coach. But I've worked with probably 10 to 15 different coaches for a few months each. And so I've gotten a lot of different perspectives from them. And I think the beauty of coaching is that a great coach isn't somebody who should tell you how to live your life. They're somebody who can reflect back your own truth to you so that you can see it in a different way. And I've found that through coaching so beautifully, where I've gotten all these different perspectives and these nuances of the way that they see me and the way that they see my life and how I'm showing up. And it just feels like every time I work with a new coach, it propels me into this new iteration and evolution of myself. And not because they're deciding that for me, but because they're just reflecting it back to me. And so having that kind of mirror, whether it's a coach or a therapist, or, you could even start with a book or something like that. I definitely recommend, if you start with a book, that you eventually make the next step to working in person or like a one-on-one kind of connection with somebody, because that'll just propel your growth even more. But yeah, it's been so helpful for me. Probably one of the biggest things that's helped me in my own healing and on my own journey. And I think something I'll do for the rest of my life in some capacity.
Yeah, I'm a huge convert too. I usually work with 2 coaches at a time. Like I love it. Obviously I'm in the coaching business myself, but like something that I've seen a shift in your business is before you used to teach a lot on the business tactics and strategies. And I think it's Tony Robbins who says like, strategy is great, but that's like 20%, and not just business, just anything in life, right? That's like 20% is the how to, the step-by-step how to. 80% is your mindset. If you don't believe fundamentally that you could do something or that you deserve it, you will not achieve it. Your body cannot act differently than what you internally kind of believe, right? And then we see this like with athletes, like visualization, I think the first got mainstream when athletes started seeing themselves, you know, crossing the finish line or running faster. It's because we have to fundamentally believe it so we can do it. And so like, it's interesting how whether it's in business or changing your relationship with alcohol, it all goes down to those inner beliefs, you know, about who we are, what we deserve, our self-worth, our self-esteem. How has that like shifted from you from like your late 20s to now your 30s? Like what is, you know, it's a beautiful game of maturing, but it's an emotional growth, it's intellectual growth, it's a lot of, like we said, shedding, but also um, believing and becoming bolder of what you really deserve in this life. How does that look like for you?
Mm. Yeah, and it's so interesting because I feel like the age can make a difference, you know, like you're getting older and you're getting wiser, as they say. I also think there are people who could have these epiphanies and this wisdom in their teens, and you know, it can happen at any time, or maybe in your 50s. Like it depends on when you decide to prioritize yourself and your own healing. Um yeah, wait, bring me back to your question so I make sure I'm answering it.
Just like how it all rests on the internal beliefs. And so, like, you made a huge pivot in your business from the strategy to the mindset. It's something that you found very poignant in your evolution. And so now you teach other business owners how to do the same. Can you tell me more about the importance of like really shifting these beliefs and success in all areas of our lives?
Yes, absolutely. So, what's really interesting about humans is that we take in so much information at all times, and our brain filters that information based on the beliefs that we have about the world and about ourselves. So, there's a statistic that I love. I find it so fascinating that we take in 11 million bits of information all the time, which means that, you know, 11 million bits could be the shade of green on this plant next to me, all the different shades of green. It could be the way the chair feels underneath me, which I wasn't noticing until I just brought it up, right? Like we are taking in all this information that we generally don't notice because it's so much. And the amount of information our brain actually processes is only 50 bits of information. So we go from 11 million bits to 50 bits that we're consciously processing. And so what decides those 50 bits are the filters that we've put on our lives, the rules that we've created about how we see the world and how we see us as human beings. And so if you can shift those filters, the ways that you're seeing the information that's around you, then that can determine whether you think the world is a really crappy place to be, where nothing is possible, where everything is scarcity minded, or it could be a world where there's tons of possibilities, where anything that you desire is possible for you. And so I think it's why it's so important that our beliefs are in alignment with what it is we want to create and what we want to feel in our lives. And if they're not, if you're looking around and you see, you know, you could determine your beliefs based on the results that you're getting in your life. If you're looking around at your results and your relationships are suffering, you're not getting the kind of love that you want in relationships or friendships. Maybe if you have a business, it's not going well and you've been working at it for a long time and it's still not really going very far. It's not going anywhere. Maybe your relationship with alcohol is something where you feel really conflicted with it. It's not something that's serving you, and you're just noticing these results in your life that aren't at the place that you want them to be. And so you can kind of work backwards and ask yourself, like, what are the beliefs, what are the values that are driving these results that I'm creating in my life? And how are those a product of these filters that I've put on my world around me? And what gets to shift? What results do I desire? What ways of being and feeling do I want to have in my life? And then what values, what filters are going to help me create those results? Something that I really like doing, I just did it at a retreat recently. It's called the values elicitation exercise, where basically you start with a result that you want, just pick one. And you ask yourself, you write down the result. Maybe the results just in my sphere would be you want to have a 6-figure business. And it's like, okay, cool. That's nice. Good for you. But why? And so you start drilling down, like, what's important about that to you? What would that allow you to have? What kind of experience would that create? And you just keep asking yourself. It's almost like the exercise of asking yourself, why do you want that? Okay, why do you want that? And you keep going down, down, down until you get to a list of a few values that are really the reason behind why you want that. And, you know, when I did this at the retreat, people were surprised by some of the values that they had that were driving the reason why they wanted what they thought they wanted. A lot of them were like, I want to be more present with my family. And it's like, if you want to create a 6-figure business and you want to be present with your family, are you doing that on the way to creating this result you want? Or are you sacrificing time with your family in order to hustle, work really late on weekdays and weekends to grow this business or have this result you want? So how can you live your values on the way to the destination? How can you really create the life that you want now versus only when you get there? And I think that's so intertwined with the beliefs that we have about the world and what's possible for us. And how we're living those beliefs right now in order to create the result that we want later on. Hope that makes sense.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's such a powerful way of describing it, especially like the stimulus that we get, all those bits of information. I've never heard it like described that way, but you know, obviously we have to filter it and make sense of it in our own language or our own, you know, what's relevant to us. And what's relevant to us has been conditioned by our life's experiences. And it's not the ultimate truth. It is not like the God-given universal truth, right? And so what a beautiful process of like changing this and finding that like you even just said, the outcome isn't what we're chasing necessarily. Like it's who we're becoming in the process, you know? And if you're not becoming, like that's what I love to say even about living alcohol free. It's not literally just about being alcohol free. Who cares what people drink at the end of the day? I don't. It's about who you become when you let go of the beliefs and the things that don't serve you and step into this most authentic version of you who's confident on their own and can create safe emotional healing spaces for themselves. Um, as you have these like radical shifts of beliefs, like for me, I know that when I changed my relationship with alcohol, that's when for me everything kind of just the lids blew off. You know, it was like I was living under such um, a prescripted reality before. You have to have a corporate job. You have to work 9 to 5. You have to like live kind of in the middle class mediocrity, you know, live in the suburbs, just like this very normalized way of living, you know, and you look at our society and most people do live fairly normal lives, but most people are also very unfulfilled, right? And so for me, like when I changed my relationship with alcohol, it's like, wait, if I can change this and kind of go on the unwalked path, right, of the unconventional way, and I can actually prove to myself that I can do it, like what else can I do? Right. So I started just kind of taking each of those beliefs I had. Like I couldn't be an entrepreneur and I couldn't write a book and I couldn't talk on videos online. Like all of those were beliefs I used to have. Right. I'm curious, like what helped you change some of the fundamental beliefs you had? And I, you know, every month I feel like I'm changing them. It's crazy. I look back at the person I was just this last summer and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've grown so much. But was there a catalyst that, you know, really kind of started you onto this idea of I have the power to change my beliefs, therefore I have the power to change my reality? Or was it just this constant evolution of growth month after month?
Yeah. Well, I just first want to say that I find it so fascinating and so true that we can kind of just pick something in our lives. For you, it was your relationship with alcohol. For me, it actually started as a personal relationship that I had that was kind of the catalyst for my growth. Business stuff came after. But picking something that's not working for you in your life and just starting there, starting with that thing, whether it's alcohol, a friendship, a business, anything, the way that you dress. Like maybe you've been dressing the same way your whole life because you thought you had to dress that way. Just picking one thing and deciding, I'm going to just see what it feels like to shift this and take it from there. Maybe it ends up shifting the rest of your life too. And so what changed my beliefs? I think a lot of this really started because I was actually in a relationship, like with a partner, and I noticed that I was having certain beliefs come up in that relationship where I was feeling anxious, and it was this old pattern that I would have with partners where I would feel anxious, and I didn't like that feeling, and I felt like if I keep doing this and I keep feeling this way, I'm going to ruin this relationship, and it's really not going to feel good for me either. And so that was actually the thing that catalyzed me into working with healers and coaches and reading books and prioritizing my own growth. I think we all kind of come to a point sometimes where we reach our limit on a thing that's not serving us. We're like, I've done this way my whole life, and I'm really ready to let this go because it doesn't feel good anymore. And I know that there's something else. I don't necessarily know what it is, but I know that there's something else on the other side of this feeling and this belief that actually could possibly serve me better. And so that's when I started working with this like spiritual coach who, didn't change everything for me. I don't think that's necessarily possible for one person to do that, but he shifted some things for me. And that's what started this sort of ripple effect of me realizing that it's possible to shift beliefs and ways of being that aren't serving me. And as I started to notice progress with that, it really is this little like stepping stone into everything else. Cause then you start to become aware of like, oh, I'm showing up this other way in this part of my life. And maybe I could shift that too. And this is probably what you also experienced of like noticing the different areas of your life that get to shift. And I think that's the fun of life. Like, I know that some people think of that and they're like, oh my God, does that mean that it's going to be this never ending process for the rest of my life of having to change who I am? And I really just think it's like the healing we get to do as we continue to evolve, and you get better problems to solve, problems over time that are going to bring you to this like super fulfilled, joyful side of you, but they never necessarily go away. They just evolve into something different. And it can be fun, especially as you start to release the fear and the anxiety about growth, and you have the tools to help you work through it. Yeah, it can be really fun to see yourself grow and to see what's possible for you. So for me, it was working with coaches and seeing some progress with that. And just knowing that as I saw progress, it felt more and more possible. I will also say too that, and I don't know necessarily the people who listen to this podcast if they're into spirituality, but I've always felt like a spiritual person. I think this could go for basically all religion too. I've always felt like a spiritual person, but it wasn't really until that experience of really wanting to heal this belief inside of myself that I started turning more to spirituality and like learning about it and working with different spiritual healers at the same time. And I've found that to be really supportive as well, because it started to show me that my way of viewing the world and my problems are actually quite small in the grand scheme of things, and that I'm supported by the universe or source. Like there's something out there that I'm part of, and I'm part of this ecosystem that is, that I matter in it, that I am worth being part of it. And so it was simultaneously this feeling of like the universe is protecting me, and I'm so small. I'm like this little blip in a timeline of the world. So I could just live my life the way that I want to, because nothing matters and also everything matters. And so it was this beautiful dichotomy of just feeling protected and whole at the same time. So that has kept me really grounded too. And I'm not like the most spiritual person, but I definitely have found a lot of peace in having some spiritual beliefs too.
I love the way you phrase it, being really guided, and held, and I think that's like the almost internal wound that we're all looking to heal, is just having that sense, and finding, I think, in spirituality is so beautiful. I love how you said, like, I've done this thing this way my whole life, right? And we have such a huge fear of the unknown, just as humans. We fear change so much. So we will stay stuck in things we've been doing one way our whole life because of not knowing what's on the other side if we change. And like that totally categorizes a relationship with alcohol, and it's like the greatest spiritual teachers teach us, like, the only thing static in life, the only thing you can ever expect out of life is change, and it is fun. Like, we fear it so much, and yet, like, that's the whole point, is progress and growing and changing and shedding skins that do not feel good on us anymore to become a more expanded version of ourselves. I'm like so excited when I get, a new client, asking about just changing their life, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, you'd have no idea what's awaiting you but yet we still fear that so much. It's such an interesting dichotomy. And I love how you brought in the spiritual aspect to hold you more, because we are human. It is scary. Our old survival brain will tell us, like unknown territory, don't go there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's worth it. You recently took a break from alcohol yourself. How did that help you get to know yourself even better?
Well, I want to go back to something that you said a second ago about change. And I feel like, we fear change. We've been talking about beliefs and conditioning. We fear change because we think that life has to stay the same way in order for us to be okay. And what if we could actually just shift the lens on change too? What if we can shift that belief within ourselves that as things change, it's just an indicator that I'm evolving, that everything is already okay, that I can trust in life, even as it moves and shifts. I like to think of us as the ocean, a river. I really think of life as this kind of aquatic place where we're always moving downstream. Abraham Hicks has this beautiful like analogy of life being a river. And what they talk about is that a lot of the times we try to move upstream, where we're like clawing at life and trying to go against the current. And that brings a lot of pain. And that's usually when we're not in alignment and we're fearing and resisting change. But if we could just go downstream with the river and just let it take us wherever it wants to take us and trust that it's taking us somewhere beautiful, then wouldn't that just be so much more fun and so much more fulfilling and all the things that we actually want to feel? I think that life wants to surprise and delight us, but we get to be willing to trust in life in order for that to happen. So that's number one on just change and letting it happen, letting it be this beautiful experience. And then, my break from alcohol. So on New Year's 2021, I drank a whole bottle of wine, which is actually not like me. I was in Guatemala at the time, and I was like at this cute restaurant by myself, just on this little solo trip writing. I was like journaling at this restaurant. I was just having a great time. And they didn't have glasses of wine. They only had bottles. So I was like, sure, it's New Year's. I'll just get a bottle. I probably won't drink the whole thing. And then I did. And I felt really shitty the next day, as you do when you drink a whole bottle of wine. And I was like, why did I do this? Like, why did I choose that? Because now I'm starting the very first day of the year feeling absolutely shitty, just wanting to stay in my hotel room and not really go do anything and just feeling kind of nauseous. And it felt like I could have chosen something different. I could have chosen to even not drink. And the drinking didn't make my night great. I could have a great time being completely sober and enjoying life, and probably even more so, right? And so it just started to feel like I chose that because of this part of me that thought, I don't want to waste this bottle of wine, or it's New Year's and everyone else around me is drinking, so I should too. Or, oh, it would be so nice to have a glass of wine with this dinner, this conditioning of what alcohol means to me. And so I decided I'm going to just stop drinking. And I didn't necessarily give it a time limit. It was just, I'm going to just keep doing it until it feels good. And I think it lasted for about 40 days at the time. I'm not a big drinker otherwise since then anyways, and really before. The bottle of wine was kind of an anomaly. But in those 30, 40 days that I wasn't drinking, I felt this like deeper connection to myself and to nature and to my spirituality too. I also noticed my skin felt really clear and just like glowing, and all of the things that people talk about with going alcohol free in the physical sense. And I think more than anything, one of my biggest values is freedom and liberation. And to know that I didn't have anything inhibiting that I wouldn't wake up one morning after, because these days it's like one glass of wine can make me feel kind of shitty the next day. And it's knowing that I wouldn't wake up the next morning and feel like just not great. I want to wake up and feel like my most joyful, energized self. And so knowing that nothing alcohol wise is preventing me from feeling the way I want to feel feels liberating to me. I'm like, why wouldn't I want to feel that? Especially if alcohol doesn't necessarily serve my life in any major way that I couldn't bring to myself without it. Yeah.
Those are such huge epiphanies, and I love how you talk about the conditioning, because it's like this this idea, this personal growth idea about looking at our lens and perspective and beliefs, like we can apply it to everything, everything, even something as an inanimate object as a beverage, because there's so much conditioning we've picked up from that about, what it means to have fun or relax or belong or fit in. It's just fascinating how we can literally get to know ourselves better through like the very things that we can shift, in our lives and have that experience. And I think that's a really, aha moment as well of like, I deserve to wake up every day feeling amazing. You know what I mean? And how long ago did many of us adopt this idea that that is not a reality we deserve, that this is just life, and this is what people do, this is what I do, and it's ultimately, I think, goes down to this question of self-worth. Like, we deserve to have it all. We deserve to feel amazing. We deserve to feel proud of ourselves. We deserve to feel proud of our choices and integrity and show up as the person we want to be in this world, and I just, the work I do with clients, it's happens to be that alcohol can shift so many transformations in your life. Like, not just the physical, like you said, it's like you get closer to your intuition and you have a bigger connection with your higher self, because there's no chatter or clattering going around in the brain or any kind of distractions like that. um, I would love to go back now, because you just exude this so much about really becoming the person that you wish you were in the world, not just by the success you have or your like outward persona, but the joy you get to feel in life. And I think that's where we're ending up. It's like, we recognize if alcohol isn't making us feel good, we deserve inherent, organic, beautiful, blissful joy. What does that look like in your life? Like, what are some of the things you love to do that bring you joy? And they could be like the littlest things, but I just love getting a nice big list of stuff like this.
Yes. Yes. One thing, every time you talk, I'm like, oh, I have so many things to say, because you just bring up so many wonderful points, and I love all of the insights that you bring. But what you were just talking about before I go into my joy list of, where we're putting our identity and how that can make us feel stuck. And I believe that anything that you feel attached to is the key to your liberation. So if you can find the things that you're feeling attached to, that your identity resides in, that's not serving you, can you release the attachment and then liberate yourself from that thing that's holding you back? And so things that bring me joy. Oh my gosh, so many things. And they're simple. I think the things that bring us joy can be really simple. I find so much joy when I'm just like going for a drive along the coast, playing music with the windows down. I live in LA where it's quite sunny, and I feel so joyful sometimes. I don't know if you feel this way sometimes, but I'll literally feel it so much in my body that it has to come out. Like, it can't just be in there because it's so much that I'll just start screaming while I'm driving along the Pacific Coast Highway up alongside the ocean. I'm just so lit up with joy. Or sometimes I'll be sitting in my backyard and I'll just be watching some of the birds kind of fluttering around to the different trees, and I'll look at the way like a plane is flying. I was doing this morning, flying above me, or like the clouds are moving, and I just feel this like deep presence. I think actually, as I'm saying it, that so much of joy comes from presence. That when we can be really present with our now moment is when we can feel the most joyful, because it's just like, that's what life is. It's just whatever is happening in the now. And if we can appreciate that without the anxiety of the future or pain of the past, then we can just really find the joy in what's happening in our moment right now. So being outside is a big joyful thing for me. Being with animals, which are also this part of nature that I just absolutely love. Laughing, being silly. You mentioned this silent disco that I went to on the beach with some friends this weekend. That was so freaking joyful for me, being connected with people that I love, and also people around me who I didn't know, but were also just expressing themselves. That makes me feel joyful. Dancing, being by the ocean. It was just like this like cluster of all the things that bring me this deep presence and deep joy in life. So yeah, I'm always working to cultivate more presence. That's actually my word. One of my words for this year is presence, because I find that I just feel the most me when I'm present in the moment.
I love that so much. And I've been learning so much from you. I think just embodying this, like we get to design our lives, and it's not often these huge radical things like you don't need to take a 6-month sabbatical and leave your job and go to, Bali, like these simple ways that we can infuse our lives with more joy, do something nice for ourselves every day. And I think it also builds our self-love, because it's you showing yourself this love, attention, and care, to give yourself that moment. Like nothing needs to be handled right now. I can just watch the plane in the sky, and I remember personally when I first took my break from alcohol, like that's what came rushing back to me. It's like the magnitude and magical experience of being alive on this planet. It's like everything I was seeing for the first time again. Everything, like I remember staring at clouds and talking with trees and dancing with my dog, like just the littlest, most mundane moments that become the most profound things of your life. Like this is life, and it strikes me as just so powerful when you can attune your mindset to see it, instead of being, I still feel boredom. I'm not saying I don't, right? But like to be able to see the magic of this beautiful experience we get to have on the planet, and wake up from all of the, I call it sleepwalking, when we literally prioritize nothing but like work, do the to-do list, like do the chores, watch TV, go to bed. And that's like how we have literally been programmed to live, right? And we can choose to wake up from that. We can choose to design any experience we wish in this world, and we can infuse our lives with more joy, work on our beliefs, find protection with the spiritual, world around us guiding us. I love the way that you phrase things and put things, because it opens my eyes. I think it's been super valuable for our listeners. And I love working with you in your mastermind, because like I am kind of tired of the old like business, do this webinar, then do this like tactic next. Like I love really getting this soulful. So I'd love for any kind of business owners out there who are listening right now, where can they find you? And what do you have to offer, and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Karolina. This has been such a beautiful conversation led by you. You can find me on my website, which is melissagriffin.com. And my first name is spelled Melyssa. So melissagriffin.com. I'm also Melyssa_Griffin on Instagram, and I post there occasionally as well. And then I have my mastermind, which you are a part of. And my mastermind is my main focus in my business. So it's called Aligned Abundance Mastermind. You can learn about it on my website or alignedabundancemastermind.com. We open enrollment for that about twice a year. And it's just like I just love it. It's my soul project, where I get to help business owners with the tactics and the strategies that feel aligned for them, but also with everything else we've been talking about, like what does success look like to you? What are your values, and are you actually living them? And who do you want to be in the world, and how can we help you to become that? So it's really this beautiful community and container for transformational growth. And then I have a podcast called Limitless Life, which basically talks about all the things we've been talking about for this past hour together, and just helping people to live a more limitless life. It's not necessarily exclusive to entrepreneurs either, so anyone can take a listen. But thank you so much. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I just appreciate you and all of the insights that you've shared in this conversation too.
Oh, thank you so much. And we'll be sure to include all those links in the show notes below. I appreciate you so much. I learned from you so much, and I love to see the joy in your life. Not to say that like we don't experience hard times, but I think being present, like you said, to our emotions, all of them, adds richness and depth and nuance to our lives. And like you said, we're being protected and guided, and when we lean into that, it doesn't have to feel so scary.
100%.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.